WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive says so somewhere right in here. All of our WNST Maryland Crab Cake Tour events brought to you by the Maryland Lottery. We're letting ourselves play. We're home again. We're at Lexington Market. We're at Fadley's. Last time we left this guy, he was running for mayor. We didn't have masks. The world was normal. Football was normal. Kids were normal. School was normal. Trump was president. How about that, Thiru Vignarajah? Thiru Vignarajah joins us here. We almost had a special surprise for you. I'm not going to let any cat out of the bag, but well, we almost had special visitors. But how are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. I'm good. It's a crazy time. I can't believe we're even still talking about the pandemic.
It's hard
I
to
feel
believe.
like there was supposed to be a moment where the season was over and we'd return to normalcy. I don't know if we'll ever get there. But
Maryland Lottery gave me my mask. I'm letting myself play, and I'm being safe.
I love it.
People are wearing it, you know.
But things are good. How are you guys?
Doing well.
He's better than me
Doing
right now.
well.
You know.
We are with Thiru Vignarajah, President and CEO of Capital Plus Financial. You know him as the former Deputy Attorney General and mayoral candidate. And every time we gather, Thiru, there are things happening. And you caught my attention recently. Everybody loves trees. Everybody loves trees. One of the things that Baltimore is renowned for is its tree canopy. And who knew, and we're going to be with the mayor in the next week or so we'll be bringing this up. There's a procurement issue involving a nonprofit trying to plant trees in Baltimore City. So something as simple as planting trees has gotten complicated. Walk us through that issue.
Look, this is a crazy one, and I will give the mayor credit that I think they're going to do the right thing, fingers crossed. So the Baltimore Tree Trust is a nonprofit based in Baltimore. Black executive director hires at-risk youth, hires returning citizens to plant trees. Last year they planted 3,000 street trees in Baltimore, 50% of all the trees in the entire city. Over the last couple of years, they planted more trees than any other organization or group. So they submit a bid to the city to compete for the city contract to plant 3,000 more trees over the next year. There's only one other bidder. There's two bidders total. The for-profit county vendor, a company called Lorenz, I'm sure they're good people, their bid was $1.6 million. The Baltimore Tree Trust bid was $950,000.
So I'm on that procurement committee. I'm going to jump in. 1.6, 900, nonprofit, for-profit. All right, that's a quick vote. Let's move on, right? We vote for the –
It should
so
have
they
been,
gave the bid to the nonprofit,
It should have been that simple. And by the way, this is not like somebody's much better at planting trees than another. There's a prescribed schedule of trees. Both bidders agree to do it.
That's a really wide difference in price. Yeah, it just is. Okay.
And by the way, Lorenz has gotten millions of dollars of contracts over the last few years, millions of dollars of contracts over the last 6 months. You have to submit 2 MBEs or WBEs as your subcontractor, minority businesses, women-owned businesses as your subcontractors. The Baltimore Tree Trust submits 3 of them. One of the 3, failed to submit their renewal application on time. Okay, they still got 2. But for that sort of small minor defect, which is literally waivable, they disqualify the Baltimore Tree Trust and they put it on the agenda to have one bidder, the for-profit company that's going to get $1.6 million. Thank goodness we made a ruckus. We made a lot of noise. The Baltimore Tree Trust and I stood up and said, this is ridiculous. This is not the way it's supposed to be. The Board of Estimates has the power to waive that kind of minor defect, and they should do the right thing. Frankly, not just because it's the right thing, but also because you're going to save taxpayers $650,000. Thankfully, they pulled the item from the Board of Estimates and delayed it. I hope they don't go put it out for rebid, because that is just a slap in the face to the Baltimore Tree Trust. They should waive the minor defect, put them on equal footing. If Lorenz has some argument for why they cost $650,000 more, great, let them make it. But I think what they want is to be on an equal footing. They just want to make sure that as a first-time nonprofit bidder, they have a chance to compete for this city contract. They're black-run. They hire at-risk employees from the city.
They're doing things the right way.
They're doing the right
Well,
things.
they have it, but the other thing, I want to make sure for our listeners that this is clear. They also had a track record, right? They have done this. They're not like coming in and saying,
You said first-time bidder. Is that no?
They are the first-time bidder for this particular contract.
understood.
But
Project.
they've done lots of work
Fair
all
enough.
across the city
Right.
as a nonprofit.
Tell them to come down to Lee Street because we got this wind tunnel that takes my trees and makes it look like this. So we got to get the tree. My wife is a tree hugger.
Yeah.
She sees that tree needs to be. That tree's not healthy. That tree needs water. But our city. By the way, I have Brandon next Wednesday at Coco's. So we're part of the Maryland Crab Cake Tour Inspire. We're moving all over the place. So we will certainly be talking to him about this amongst.
And what I would
we have a lot of other issues.
I was going to say what I would urge the mayor to do. What I would urge the city hall to do is just waive the minor defect. Put it before the Board of Estimates. They've got two bidders. Let them do the right thing and choose between them. Putting it out for rebid and delaying it is just a little bit of an insult to the Baltimore Tree Trust. I don't think that's the right way to do things. And I'll end by saying this. This isn't just about the Baltimore Tree Trust. The tree canopy is something that Baltimore City should be very proud of. It's about the procurement system. It's about the millions of dollars.
Well, that's the point you were making.
Exactly. Millions of dollars that just get frittered away because you're helping out some bidder that you know.
What's the oversight in Baltimore City through for that group that makes those bids?
I mean, let's be honest.
Or makes those awards?
It's the Board of Estimates. I mean, the Board of Estimates.
Now tell folks who sits on the board.
There's 5 seats. The mayor appoints the city solicitor, as well as I'm missing someone. City solicitor and so the comptroller's on it. The head of the city council's on it, and there's one other appointee by the mayor. The 5 of them do it. The mayor actually controls the Board of Estimates because he's got the 3 votes.
3 votes, right?
And one of the things, and I give Mayor Scott.
Well, we talked
credit.
about this at length with all of you candidates, whether it's Mary Miller or whoever was here, that the mayor of Baltimore has a lot more power left over from Governor Schaefer and Tommy D'Alessandro, right? That was put in. To sort of steamroll things.
And
look, the mayor.
You were just getting ready to. You were getting ready to give the mayor some credit.
I was going to say I want to be very consistent about this. I actually think a strong mayor model has value. We don't like a strong mayor when we don't like the mayor, but if you have a good, effective mayor, the ability to say that's the person that's responsible for all of these challenges, he's the person who appoints the police commissioner, he appoints the members of the school board, he appoints the majority of the Board of Estimates, he sets the budget, he sets the tax rate. That can be a very, very powerful
And 2.5
mayor.
years from now, he'll have to get elected again, right? And he'll have to say this is the track record we stand on.
Making excuses to say it's not my responsibility, it's not my fault, doesn't work with the mayor of Baltimore because they have so much authority. I was going to give the mayor credit because during his campaign, he actually said he wanted to reform the Board of Estimates and modify the composition so he didn't have as much power. Now, I disagreed with him on that, but I respect the position that he took. Now I think he's, whistling a different tune. I think it's comfortable to be in that role and know you control the Board of Estimates. But that's the kind of thing that I think is the bigger issue. We got to get this procurement system running in an efficient, transparent, accountable way. And this, unfortunately, is an example of procurement in Baltimore City at its worst.
Well, there's so many. We're going to follow that when there's so many things to talk about when we have you on. One of the things is I know you've been deeply involved in trying to help Fadley's where we are right now. And I know they're getting ready, along with other merchants, to begin to make the move to the new market. I'm assuming that you would be an advocate for the city being front and center to make sure that they can do whatever they can for this anchor institution to have a seamless transition across the parking lot.
Look, my dad grew up on a farm on a coastal island and
Sri Lanka,
and loved fish. And when we came here, this was familiar. We went to Lexington Market to get fresh fish all the time. This is there's no more iconic image of Baltimore.
I had pictures of me when I was 3 years old in front of that Coca-Cola sign down at the other side.
It's incredible. And in the name of progress, we got a new amazing Lexington Market opening, a stone's throw from here. That's great. But as much as you can retain the character of this historic building, you should. And there is nothing more defining of Lexington Market than Fadley's. I mean,
right there.
It's just that simple.
Well, we'll be having that.
And I'm not, I'm not sponsored by Fadley's. I just love it.
Right.
And,
we'll be having that discussion with the mayor because, and I'm assuming again that the city will do the right thing. But I think we often lose sight of the stress that small businessmen and women are. I mean, Nestor, you're a small businessman,
and it has been stressful as hell.
and
I'll tell you that.
they're going to look at
moving from a sports radio station, AM radio, like 30 years next month. It's not easy. I can't imagine being in a brick and mortar business with seafood that spoils. Yeah. And as Bill has said many times, this is the last creature on earth that we we have to go hunt crab.
Yep.
They don't raise them. They're not farm raised. I mean, this is a tough business in a tough challenge environment.
Nope. I mean, they go into it with their eyes wide open. They knew there were going to be several months when they're closed down. They're going to be closed down in anticipation for the move. But I think people have to understand that if you're closed down, your revenue stream stops. You've got all these employees. So we certainly are going to be looking to the mayor and others to try to make sure they're there.
And Don, I mean, two things more broadly. Number one, I think there's this impression that small business owners are raking it in.
Right.
I don't think people realize that, number one, the margins are narrow.
Right.
Number two, the failure rate is high. Lots of these businesses just don't make it.
The hours are long, whether you make it or
not.
not. Whether you make it or not, the hours are long.
Correct. And that's in the ordinary season. In a season like this, where you've got supply chain issues, labor shortages, rising costs, low demand, we should be doing everything we can to make sure these businesses thrive. Fadley's is one great example of it. But people have this impression that businesses are just raking it in. They're these corporate profiteers. Yeah, some of them have done very well. And they've created jobs and made a profit. That's healthy.
For every Jeff Bezos, there's 1,000 Nestors and Damies.
Well, Fadley, as they point out, they've been paying rent for 130 years.
Yep.
So we need to make sure they're paying rent for another 130 years.
And striking the right tone to say businesses are our partner, not our enemy. Businesses create jobs. They don't just pay, revenue to the city. Striking that tone with the business community, I think, is really important for this mayor and for this city hall.
I could not agree more. Thiru, I yearn for the day when you're our guest and we're not talking about crime in Baltimore City.
Amen to that.
I can't think of an issue that is front and center at the breakfast table for folks each and every day more than crime across the nation, certainly up all over the nation, but in Baltimore City. And our good friend Dan Rodricks just wrote a really touching piece on the crime in Station North around the Charles Theater and Sophie's Crepes and the impact that's having on the small businessmen and women over there. We're certainly, it's going to be front and center when we talk to the mayor.
One of my favorite areas in the city.
Yeah,
too,
we're going to talk to the mayor about this. We may be making incremental progress, and there are those elected officials who suggest we are. It doesn't feel like we are, and that feel piece is important.
Respectfully, and I think this is really important to be honest about it, I don't see evidence that we're making incremental progress. There is something that gets issued every week. You can go online and look at the police report for crime in the past week, and they do a year-to-date comparison between this year and last year. And if you go down the run of it, virtually every category is up, with a few exceptions, but a few of those exceptions are things that are just underreported because we're in the middle of a pandemic. We don't report burglaries.
I was going to ask you if how accurate are we even being, or how have we ever been?
I appreciate that. I think
one of the nice things about being back at Fadley's, we have people
yell,
stop by and
I voted for you.
Say hi, and
I
that's
voted
always
against
good.
you. I voted
Go ahead,
for you.
Nestor asked you a question. Nestor,
thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
And he would do it again. There you go.
Nestor asked you about the accuracy of
it. I mean, look, this is one of the reasons I focus on homicides, because you can't juke that statistic. A murder happens. There's a few exceptions. That's a murder. It's going to get counted as a murder. The problem with burglaries is if people don't feel like cops are going to respond to them, they stop underreporting it. That number is down. Street robberies are down because there's less people on the streets, especially in the downtown sector. But even those numbers, overwhelmingly, those statistics are up. Homicides, rapes, commercial robberies, carjackings, all of those numbers are up.
How about the ATM thing? That's the criminals always got a new gig, right?
And look, Nestor, they'll tell you that the ATM thefts number has gone down from last year to this year. But two things. One, we actually arrested a lot of people last year for it. So in 2020, there was a series of arrests that were done by coordinated structure. You got to give people credit for those arrests. That did bring the number down. Number two, they were doing it very differently. These brazen
we're smashing in, right?
That is a new MO that is becoming is spreading here in Baltimore. And look, when the mayor laid out his most recent crime plan, I said to him, look, and I said publicly, I give him credit. Number one, this is a clear plan. I worry that a lot of what's in here is the same as what's in the past. We use the same buzzwords: violent repeat offenders, accountability, community engagement, community policing. Those are all great. But the thing I really respected about it is that it had a barometer. It said we pledge to deliver a 15% reduction in homicides every year. And the mayor did a series of interviews where people said, is that too aggressive? And he said no. And what that meant was that at the end of his first year, this year, we were supposed to be down to 285 murders. Next year, 245 murders. The next year after that, 205. It gave us a way of evaluating whether the plan was working or not. Now, obviously, we've missed the mark this year. That's okay. Sometimes you set goals and you don't hit that mark. But I think it's really important for City Hall, the police commissioner, the mayor to say, look, we didn't hit our mark this year. Here's what we think we went short. Here's what we think is working. Here's what we think is not working. There is not that communication. If you're going to put out barometers and yardsticks to evaluate your plan, you got to honor them. I remember saying when I was a candidate, I said, look, I'm going to get murders to below 300 or I won't run again. And I said it over and over and over again because I wanted the media, I wanted the pundits, I wanted you guys to hold me to that. So if you set a mark, you got to honor that mark. And if you don't hit it, that happens in business. Sometimes you set a target and you don't hit it, but the CEO goes out there and explains why that didn't happen, what caused it to not take place, and what are you doing to fix it. That's what we want from our executives here in Baltimore as well.
Well, it just seems to be it's this ongoing issue that appears, and I actually tie it to Thiru back to recent elections, whether it be Virginia or New Jersey, whatever. I think there's a sense in the country when you look at FBI stats and crime is really increasing for the first time in decades. I mean, the whole story was, right, for decades that FBI crime stats were coming down. Well, now they're exploding. I mean, some communities are seeing 400, 500, 600% increase in homicides. My premise is that all of this leads to this sort of chaotic sense that the world is out of control, which in a way fuels some of this crazy Trump-era stuff where people reach for really insane things like elected officials showing other elected officials slashing their throat. I mean, things that are beyond the pale of civil discussion.
Constructive dialogue in these topics is so critical, and when things go haywire, people lose that civility, right? They start turning to both the broken playbook of yesteryear, right, and something you're talking about, mass incarceration and mandatory minimums and stop and frisk again. That's not the answer. But you also start talking in ways that are not helpful to one another, just as humans to one another.
I've experienced it at the end of the play.
It gets ugly. It gets ugly. And for those of us in the public eye, we're accustomed to it. Nice people come up and say, I voted for you, great. You got to greet them the same way as the guy who comes up and says, I'm so glad you're not mayor. That's.
How about the guy yesterday was trying to convince me that the World Trade Center planes didn't happen? Yeah. What do I do with that guy? I wasn't going to go into Pizza John's and have pizza with him because it just didn't.
You're cordial and then you walk away.
We're really getting to a point where. And it was Carl Sagan's birthday the other day, and you've read that passage many times about clutching our crystals?
Yes.
Yeah, you've read that. When I actually, I pull it down every year. I actually read it earlier today. But the dumbing down of America is most evident in the slow decay of substantive content and enormously influential media, lowest common denominator programming. But the part here is a society unable to distinguish what feels good and what's true. What feels good and what's true.
I'm not just blowing smoke. One of the reasons I like coming on this show is we actually engage in substance. Part of it is the format allows us to have a longer conversation.
Long form, right.
Let me take that last thing about crime rising across the country. That is true. But let's be very clear. What we're talking about and seeing here in Baltimore is not part of this national trend. Go to 2020. That was when the spikes happened. Google it. Google per capita homicide rate in America. Look at the top 60 cities. There's a nice rundown of them per capita. Baltimore City among large cities is number 1. Baltimore City among all cities is number 2. If you cut our murder rate in half tomorrow, just cut it in half, we go from number 1 of large cities to number 3. We are literally off the charts. There are no cities that are doing as badly as Baltimore among large cities, and among all cities.
I'm going to ask you to repeat that stat because that's pretty sobering.
So you go from 300 to 150.
We're still the third deadliest city in America. So
per capita.
Look, literally per capita, exactly. So
you'd say we have a culture problem?
Well, no. We have a crime problem.
Yeah,
we have a crime problem that is of different order of magnitude than what they're talking about in L.A. last year, for the first time in like 15 years, had more than 200 murders. If they had our population, they would have
1,600 or something like that.
It's
Right.
2,100 murders.
2,100. Wow.
If LA, it's just a completely different thing.
Well, let me throw some. Our friend Ben Jealous visited with us right before you came on, and he made and I'm. React. I have no idea how you feel about this because we don't green room it ahead of time.
That's what makes it good.
Ben said, look, we talked about Station North. He said, one of the things that we need to do there and other places is we need to invest in cops on the beat. There needs to be a physical. Now, that sounds so logical, Thiru. Do you agree with that?
Yes, and let's be very clear. And when I heard City Hall say that the crime plan they unveiled a few months ago was based on conversations with the community, I was skeptical. And the reason is, if you go to West Baltimore, if you go to East Baltimore and ask the people that live in those communities, what do you want? Do you want less cops? They would say, absolutely not. We want more cops. We don't want cops jacking up our sons and daughters.
We can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Absolutely.
I'm sick of saying it.
We don't want racial profiling. We don't want people. What we do want is cops that are present and empowered to do their job. And we need, 600 more cops to do that effectively?
Thiru, I used a phrase recently in something that I wrote. I said, the Democrats have a Walgreens issue. And what I meant by it was the day that Walgreens closed 3 additional pharmacies in San Francisco after having already, I think, closed 7 before that. So they've closed 7 pharmacies because people are walking off the street with green trash bags, helping themselves, and walking out past police officers and going on their way. Now, when I say Democrats have a Walgreens problem, I think what you just said is important. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We don't want police beating those people up. We don't want them tackling them, beating their head into the ground, shooting them. But I sure as hell want the police saying, you're not walking in here and coming into Faley's and stealing 10 lobsters and walking out. I don't know why, as Democrats, we have so much trouble articulating a crime policy, because it's the one thing that people in living rooms, all kinds of crime, black, bright,
solve
brown,
that, we
white,
vote for you.
yellow.
And get us a job. And get us a job.
Ben pointed out, and I want you to pick up on this, Ben pointed out, and do I think he nailed this at the end. He said, listen, Democrats better be careful, because they have not only a white male problem, they're slowly starting to see that they have a black male problem and Hispanic male problem that are beginning to drift to the Republicans. And very often it's on this issue of crime because Democrats seem to be out to lunch on it.
Because if you're getting your clock cleaned in a neighborhood, in a bad neighborhood, you're not getting help from the people you're voting. I mean, the number one thing I hear from the Middle River and the places I'm from, and I was at Colgate this week, the voters over there say they're not doing anything about it. Democrats have run the city for 100 years. Like that,
well, they've got the talking point.
That's the talking points.
Yep. And the frustration with that talking point is Democrats were also in power when all of these urban renaissances happened.
Right.
When the turnaround happened in Washington, D.C. and L.A. and San Francisco.
You sound like a guy that ran for office and knows this.
Don Schaefer rebuilt this city.
Absolutely. Right. I mean, so yes, you can appropriately criticize the people that are in power now during this 18-month fiasco in cities across America, but we were also in power when these cities turned themselves around, when they started, blossoming and burgeoning with people and bringing in.
Well, there is no plan on the right side to fix cities.
Correct.
I mean, there just isn't.
No.
I mean, I haven't heard a word anywhere since Bush about 1,000 Points of Light. I mean, it's been a long time since we've heard that song.
Cities are the future of this country. Because of all sorts of reasons that we could have a big lecture about, cities are the future of this country. And if you don't figure out how to engage in police reform while also having effective policing, you're lost. You're lost politically, but more importantly, you're lost in terms of actually solving these problems. You don't have to go to Walgreens in San Francisco. Go to the 7-Eleven in Fells Point and go up to the cashier and ask her. They have hours of video of people coming in with backpacks, stuffing their bags in, 7 or 8 people coming in, and all of them walking out. They have one private security officer trying to block the way. What's he going to do? He maybe stops one person while the other 6 others skirt past him, and it's happening every day in businesses across the country. And those small margins, they can't afford to have thousands of dollars of losses every day.
And it makes people feel as if they have no control. It makes them feel that their children are unsafe.
Well, you can't feel like government throws its hands up.
Correct.
There has to be people charged with solutions who are held accountable. And, by the way, Thiru Vignarajah is here. It's all brought to you by the Maryland Lottery. We're doing the crab cake tour. I already ate the crab cake. Ben jealous didn't eat crab cakes. I'll get you crab cake, but I know you're off and running around here, and you look nice. We're going to be in a lot of places over the next month. It's my 30th anniversary next month. I just want to say this to you because you have 5 minutes. I got a clock on you. I created Baltimore Positive. He hated the idea, and he'll nod his head, to think about running for mayor in the election you ran for.
I'm going to say, I didn't hate Baltimore Positive. I hated you running for mayor.
Damien knows this, that if Sheila would have won, and I gave her fair time in the exact space we're in, you, everyone else, that if Sheila would have won, I was ready to run for 90 days, which is all it would have been. July, August, and September. Literally, it would have been a 120-day campaign to say this is unacceptable to me. And I would tell Sheila that. I'll tell Brandon that next week. So if I would have run, what would I have done, Don? I would have lost, right?
You would have lost.
Right,
yeah.
exactly. So I would be where you are,
Correct.
which is, I've got a radio station. Let's fix Baltimore. I'm Baltimore. Like,
but
he
Thiru
said
could win.
That was the out. No, his outcome was you can't and won't win. Therefore, you're better off just like being a media thing and having people like you. I said, well, I can walk and chew gum. I can run and win and lose. You run, you lose, but you're still like here, vested. You're always sort of running for mayor in that you want to fix things, right? Yeah. So whether you're running or not. So the day after it's over, you get your feelings hurt, it's bad, you turtle up a little bit, you come back out. Here you are, a year and a half later, getting you out of, I know you have a job, you have things you do, but you're still running for mayor, and I guess that was my point to Don. If I ran for mayor and lost, there'd be no shame in that, because I tried really hard. Like Ben Jealous sat here and ran for governor and lost, right? I mean, but you never lose if you're still in there and you're creating change. Your tree issue.
See,
right?
I think we've sat here today, and Damie's watching on, and I think Thiru has what I'm going to call it the O'Malley effect in this sense, that it gets misrepresented. As we've been here today, black, brown, white people have stopped by to give Thiru a thumbs up. His message of taking on crime, setting clear standards, hold me accountable, and if I don't do it, throw it out. It's not unlike,
you were the crime candidate.
It's not unlike the day
no doubt about that.
Not unlike the day that former Mayor and Governor Martin O'Malley stood here and a young African American male walked by and he looked and he screamed, right? He was standing right there and he said, Hey, you're the mayor. You're the best mayor. And of course,
came over, hugged him.
Martin's comment was, you would never know that by the limousine liberals who say Martin O'Malley was just out there to, zero tolerance and trying to put people. The point being, these folks that are giving you a thumbs up, coming over and patting you on the back, they're the ones sitting on the stoop who want to be safe, Thiru.
I was going to say, Nestor, running for mayor was the most fun, best professional year of my life. I loved it. You got to meet people from all different backgrounds. As an extrovert, you gain energy from it. I loved it.
And you take relationships.
Absolutely.
We still have a relationship because you ran for mayor.
Yep.
And I thought about it.
And when you lose, you are hurt. You know,
sure.
You cared about it. You put yourself out there. Then if you can put aside your pride, if it really was about the city and not about yourself, you get back out there. And one of the things that is
By the
most
way, if you
nourishing,
can't put aside your pride and do what you're doing, you never deserve to be mayor to begin with.
That might be right. Look, it's hard, and a lot of
that.
people retreat. A lot of people, and I don't blame them for retreating. But if you can put yourself back out there, the encouragement and nourishing that you get of your soul for just continuing to do some good work, for having these conversations, for helping Miss Regina get her house back, for helping small business owners, fight back against the system. That stuff is. It's why you ran in the first place.
Helping Fades get people to pick some crabs.
Yep. There's a great line at the end of one of my favorite movies, A Few Good Men, where a person has just been discharged from the military, and the person says, you don't have to have a badge on your arm to have honor.
Right.
You don't have to have public office to do good, to do public good.
No doubt about that.
And as much as we hold our public officials to a high standard, I've pointed out some things that I hope Mayor Scott is asked about and listens to. At the same time, these are people of good faith. Brandon is a nice guy. He is trying very hard.
Oh, you can't
I don't think there is a corrupt bone in his body.
You can't talk to the
that
mayor.
means something coming from you, because I say that to people, because I mingle amongst Republican business owners who, and the day after he was elected, I had somebody say the most awful things to me about him, and it made me lose respect for them. And this is a person I had a long relationship with. I'm like, say what you want, dude's been mayor a week. He's in the middle of a plague, and we got to wear masks, and nobody's happy about that. But he's got medical. I mean, and we have medical institutions here that are fundamental to our country.
Yeah. And he takes. You can't appreciate you saying that. You can't sit down with Mayor Scott and not see
Heart
that he takes every homicide personally. I mean, he's lived it. He grew up in Park Heights. He's walked past the chalk lines.
He ran because he got robbed.
He wants to fix it.
You know?
I couldn't agree more.
Now, whether he can or not, that's up to us. That's a societal issue.
And we can have
that.
disagreements about policy and approaches and tone, but to suggest that the people, and I'm not just talking about Brandon, I'm talking about Brandon and all of them.
Right.
I don't know very many that are in it for the wrong reasons.
Right.
They genuinely
I say that all the
change
time.
things. Right. But look, I am always happy to have a constructive dialogue. Whenever I'm invited to something, I show up, in part because whether you agree with me or disagree with me, I will have a conversation with you. And I think that conversation is as vital to the solution as the solutions themselves.
You got to get out of here, man. I know.
Good to see you guys.
Visit again sometime.
No, I love it.
Capital, real quick, Capital Plus Financial. Give us one quick 30-second update.
Very, very proud to have a chance to lead this company into the next chapter. We helped 480,000 businesses get PPP loans, among the 5 biggest PPP lenders in the country. 80% of those businesses and contractors were businesses and contractors of color. These were people that weren't getting loans through traditional banks that Capital Plus was able to help out. It's a company, it's a CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution. It's a B Corp, which means its mission is devoted not just to creating profits for its shareholders, we are publicly traded, but also to tearing down the barriers that have fueled the racial wealth gap across this country, and including in places like Baltimore for too long.
Great stuff.
Yeah, great to see you guys.
Is your Twitter still Thiru for Mayor? What is your Twitter?
I think it's the same as always.
Thiru for Baltimore.
Mainly because
Thiru
only
for Baltimore, not for Mayor. It was for Baltimore.
only my team knows how to change it. So
Thiru
I'm
for
listing it in there.
Baltimore.
So good to see everybody. Good
Thiru
to see you.
Vignarajah, we had his sister Krish on last month. She's doing great work with the Lutheran
Immigration and Refugee Services.
Okay, so make sure I get the name of that. And it was Lutheran. That's all.
As long as you get her
I
name
had a
right,
Lutheran
she's
church
happy,
at the end of my
so.
street. My son was baptized Lutheran, so there you have it. Thiru Vignarajah, Don Muller's here. It's all brought to you by the Maryland Lottery. We're letting ourselves play. We are at Fadley's. I had a crab cake at 9:15 a.m. today. That makes a great Wednesday. I'm making up for all the lost time and the bad back in October. Nick's Grandstand in Timonium on Friday. We'll be with Mayor Brandon Scott next Wednesday, taking on some of these issues that we talked about here today. That'll be at Coco's in Lauraville. We are doing Black Friday in Harford County. Barry Glassman, hello, it's me. I'm calling. Abingdon will be there on Black Friday. And then we're in your neck of the woods at the Beaumont.
Coming to the Beaumont?
On the 9th of December.
Some surprise guests.
My 30th anniversary on radio is December
There you
13th.
go. Congratulations.
So you know what I'm doing? I'm celebrating for 30 days. At 30 crab cakes, we're going to do 30 days. I'm going to do 31 crab cakes next summer. And Damie's going to come to the Eastern Shore and hang out with me. We're going to go crabbing together, hopefully. I hope so. I'm Nestor. He's Don. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking. Baltimore, positive. It's somewhere over here.